Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Everybody, it's Lynda Lippin, and we are back once more for another episode of the Pilates Goddess podcast. And you may notice that when I doing my interviews that I have a fabulous network and that it does sound like all of these people are my friends, but they really are. And the person who I am interviewing today has been a friend of mine we're going on 40 years. Martin, want you to know we're going on 40 years. Yeah, we're at least in the high 30s. Yes. So,
right.
Dr. Martin William Kettelhut and I went to graduate school together at Temple University for a PhD in philosophy. And we've had years when we kind of lost track of each other, times when we've refound each other. This has happened at least 3 or 4 times since we left graduate school. And yet here we are. And today we are going to have a fabulous discussion about connection, collaboration, and community, the big 3 C's. Now, Dr. Martin Kettelhut is a triple bottom line results-driven executive coach serving business leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and financial advisors. He got into coaching because he is committed to a healthy economy that works for everyone. And as you guys know, I'm a firm believer that healthy, healed humans are literally our best hope moving forward. Martin elicits the natural wisdom, compassion, and joy in business leaders, and then they pay it forward, doing the same with their constituents, with their clients, with their staff, and their community. His 3 pillars of triple bottom line results production are profit. And I want you to remember that our businesses are for profit, but profit earned in alignment with your values and purpose. People living in authentic relationship, even when it's challenging. And God knows these last few years have been mighty challenging. And planet, so we can support the planet with our economy with gratitude. His clients and him partner to attain success, not only in business, but in life. Because when both of those things are working together, when everything is working together as a foundation, you will get naturally occurring profits. And that is really what we all want. And they like to call him Doc. I'll call him Marty because that's how I've known him for, the whole time we've known each other, which is the majority of my life. All of his clients discover their true purpose in life, which then allows them to prioritize what's important in their businesses and their lives. He helps people find their innate God-given purpose. And he is the author of a book that I really recommend that you read. There is actually a review of his book on my blog at lindalippin.com and also on the book's Amazon page and Goodreads page, because I found it that valuable. And his book is called Listening.
Listen until you disappear.
Listen until you disappear.
Right.
And
the company is listening is the key.
Okay. And the book is Listen Until You Disappear. Now, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Pilates Goddess, Martin.
What a warm welcome. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Isn't it fun when you hear other people read your bio?
Yeah. Like, wow, I did all that.
Right? You're like, really? That's me? I don't even know how that happened.
Right.
So, I've been, as you know, because we've discussed this prior to this very discussion, we are going through a whole load of kind of questions and problems within the Pilates community in relationship to the 3 C's, right? In relationship to community, collaboration, and connection.
Yeah.
And that's really why I wanted to have you on, because I was like, I know a guy.
I'm connected to somebody.
Right? I know a guy that I'm connected to, that I've collaborated with.
That's right. That's
And
right.
who is part of my community. And I am going to bring him on so that we can talk about this and about the importance of this, really, for all of us. And so, I really loved Listen Until You Disappear. And I, frankly, for many, many years was afraid of that sense of kind of dissolution of self or ego.
Yeah. Yeah. We all are.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that. Why is that such a fear for us?
Why is it such a fear for us? Well, I think part of it is historical. It's like our training over many centuries has been to think of ourselves as individuals, right? And I couldn't say what it's like to live in China or India, but I've lived most of my life in the United States or Europe, and we don't recognize the degree to which the way we've been taught to even reason, like just performing a logical inference, it's based on a model of thinking that assumes that the answers we're going for are these discrete individual events or feelings or people or what have you, but they're individuals. And so our world is very much divided up. It's like chopped up into atoms. And that's the way we've been taught to think. And when, if you stop any of us and say, well, is that true? Is that really what reality is made up of? Are these individual chunks, individual people, individual atoms? Nobody would agree with that. We all know that there are also things in our reality that are shared or general or common or continuous over time, which, that's not an individual. So I think a lot of it is just our training in the way we're thinking. And so that's why, if you say, well, would you like to collaborate? Well, oh my gosh, that challenges our thinking to and so we usually, even when we think about collaborating, we break it down to, okay, well, you do part A and I'll do part B, and that'll be that's not even collaborating. That's still dividing it up into individual projects that then get stapled together, right?
So we start to basically treat collaboration the way we treated group projects in elementary school.
That's right. That's right. And so now I want to get into a deeper level of this, because I think this might be what's going on with Mr. Gallagher. And that is, how do I want to say this? We live for and in and from these individual places, like what's good for me, or, what will make me money, what, makes me feel good, all of that. And we're starting to lose in our society this sense of what's like to share a value, to live through a value, like, even the value of, like freedom or liberty, or these things that are both sides of the political camp claim those words for themselves. And yet, like in the Pilates community, there are certain values that you all live from, you share them. And that's what makes it the Pilates community, because those things are shared, right? It's not the Pilates community because Lynda makes this much money, or Lynda teaches this method, or Lynda has this much success. That's not what makes it a Pilates. It's because of our shared values. And it sounds to me like this Mr. Gallagher doesn't share those values, or at least key ones, and that's where the rift comes in. And so I think this is an old technique that we've just unlearned, how to live from sharedness. I mean, if you grow up in an Aboriginal community, you don't have any choice to live but from what's shared, right?
Right.
You know, the guys go out and kill a buffalo and come home and we all eat from it. Like, there's just, everything was shared, the hunting, the eating, everything. And we're not brought up that way. We're brought up, this is my sandbox, that's yours. This is my salary, that's your, everything is divided up individually in our world. And so I think it's just something we've lost track of, but it comes up every once in a while. It comes up again, like you get somebody like Barack Obama, let's say, as an example, not as a god, but as an example, who puts something out there like hope in the future, and it brings us together into a community of hope.
Right. And it's funny, as you were saying that, I was thinking that, with my Pilates teacher clients, with my coaching clients in Pilates Teacher Mastermind, I always start them with identifying their core values.
There you go.
And why it is that, first of all, why it is that they are, period. And then why it is that they're doing what they're doing. And a lot of times, I get a lot of pushback on that. Right. Why I teach Pilates, like, why do I need to come from this? And I'm like, because the more you kind of speak your truth and really what's valuable to you, and those values can change. You can shift them. You can,
sure,
it's fine. But when you're speaking from your truth and when you're speaking from your core values, you're going to attract those people who share that truth and share those core values. And frankly, those are the people you want as clients. Those are the people you want in your life and around you. And, I also think that it's part of the whole kind of corporate dilemma in the US, right? We don't talk about salaries ever. Mm-hmm. In fact, in some businesses, you're contractually obligated to not talk about your salary.
True, yeah.
For fear of an HR smackdown. And so we sort of go around and we kind of make these assumptions that, like, other people are doing the same thing, or they're doing better, or they're doing worse. I see even a lot of Pilates instructors kind of going into pricing models based on what the people around them are doing. I'm like, that studio might be really busy, but are they making a profit?
Right.
Do you know that? Well, if you don't, then why are you following their business and pricing model? Like, what's the point of that? So is it possible when communities get fractured because of the focus on, ego and individualism? How do we come back together? Is it worth coming back together? I think it is, but it's a tough process.
It is. It can be. Yeah. I mean, people come together. Well, we are originarily, however you want to put that, we are together, and then fracture happens and things start not working because it does take a village. We find that out and things aren't working. And so that we will fall back into what is our natural connectedness. I think so. Like if you have an aberrant egotist that appears and divides people up, like Trump has done with the country, right? Then it will run its course. We will fall back together. We come from being together, and like that's what my point was, referring to the Aboriginals, because I think we've taught ourselves to be separate, right? That's not our natural way. That's learned, and so it's a reiteration of those values. a re-singing of those, like coming together as one voice again around the things that are important to us is what will bring us back together. And those aberrant, egotists they won't last. Here's why, by the way. It's kind of interesting. Values, let's take the value of freedom, because we already used that example, but you can take anything that you consider a value. That value was around, like it was a reality in the universe long before there were even human beings to value it. And it will be a value long after all human beings have passed away. Values are eternal. They're timeless. And so we will fall back into them after the separation has run its course.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why they're uplifting too, because they're timeless. They're not stuck in a circumstance. Our values, like freedom, like we keep going back to it, we lose track of it. We go back to it, we lose track of it. It's always going to be there. So there's a lot of hope to be taken there.
Yeah, and I also feel like sometimes the kind of divisive figures almost need to come up, so that we're just reminded of kind of what we don't want. And also so that we can see in a way the tools that they use, right, to kind of sway people and separate people and bring people around. There was actually there were several moments where not really for me, because I don't care anymore. But where, I would get like DMs on Facebook with screenshots of things that were being said about me and certain other people's Pilates groups that I am not a member of.
Wow.
And then every few months, as somebody would, say their truth or say something, we would again see screenshots being passed around. And what was very interesting was a lot of the folks who were making comments in the privacy of the group were the same people who were leaving comments on our posts in support. So that was really interesting to a lot of us, where it was like, yes, I totally agree, and you're brilliant, and I love you. And then you get the screenshot of, well, who does she think she is? Or, what is this going on? Or, I mean, at the beginning, it was just, even like pre-COVID, it was about, you can't teach Pilates online. Can't do it.
Oh my, somebody just asserted that.
Yep. Can't do it. Must be in the studio on apparatus, hands-on, period, end of discussion. And I was like, nope.
Right.
No, that's not how any of this works.
Well, and that those limitations, so to speak, probably give that person a certain kind of integrity that they want and, that they use in their practice. But it's not absolutely true. But, like in music, you could say, well, that's not exactly in any particular key signature, that piece that you wrote. Well, okay. You can restrict yourself to G major. I'm going to wander a little away from that, if you don't mind. And it's still music.
Right. Whether it's discordant, whether it's not discordant, whatever.
Right.
Whatever that looks like. Tony and I were talking about this the other night. Tony's my husband, by the way, if for listeners who don't know, but we were having a discussion about music, right? And about music that we liked prior to meeting. And then, you have that kind of the merging of the music as you get together. Yeah. So we of course bonded over blues and Zeppelin, and you know what my music is, and and then we got into like the background of the Zeppelin songs, and then that brought us to your Freddie McDowell's and your Willie Dixons and that kind of really deep old Southern blues. But then he always had a lot of this kind of techno dance music that I just didn't love, like KLF, Shaman. And I have to tell you that a few years ago, before they passed, Genesis Breyer Peorage did an installation at the Rubin.
Oh, wow.
And they had a lot of their artwork and a lot of, images, but a lot of like furniture from their apartment, furniture that they, had shared with their partner before they died. And they did a concert. So we actually went to see Psychic TV there. And it turns out that that I had always loved Psychic TV. He did not know about Psychic TV, but there was the kind of techno dance thing that we were able to kind of, come back to. And of course, over the course of, Genesis's lifetime, they did all kinds of funky music, all kinds of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Psychic TV was kind of all over the place in terms of what they were doing and genres and all of that. And I loved it. And that ended up being our bond, musically after all of the other stuff. But we didn't discover this until, we had already been together 20 something years. Because we're going on 30. And
I bet it gave, I would be willing to bet that it uplifted the relationship to find that commonality. And I think that's one of the reasons why, it so saps our power when we're divided, not just because you can't get as much done, obviously collaboration, you get more done. It does take a village, but also that because of the eternal nature of these values, they have a buoyancy that my own trying to get my car started doesn't have, right? Like freedom or what's another great, love is a value, obviously, or
mine are truth, care, and love.
Truth, right? When we're coming from these values, we're uplifted because they're not going to die. They will live on after we do. And so they have a buoyancy, and it uplifts us when we're participating in those values together.
Now, you told me a little story when we were chatting the other day, about one of your clients and how they were sort of awakened to collaboration by a competitor.
That's right.
By a competitor at a conference.
That's right.
Who literally walked up, and this is all in blockchain, which is, new.
Yes.
Like really new technology. And so, from what I remember, your client was there, but everything that was kind of coming out from them was in deep competition and kind of anti everybody else. And then one of their competitors came up and said, I think we could work together, but we're not feeling that from you. We're not feeling that. We're not feeling that openness from you at all. But there's so few of us, and this is so new, that I bet that if we got together and helped each other's work, we could all, make more money, do better, and be happier humans, and not be as crazy busy as we are now. And they did. And sure enough, everybody is doing better. And this is, I think, a lesson. I mean, obviously, it's a lesson in all sectors of business and all sectors of the economy. But I think there's always this, assumption that if you're doing more spiritual coaching, or you're in fitness or Pilates or yoga, or anything that's kind of mind body and dealing with healthy humans,
Yeah.
that the community and the collaboration are kind of automatically there.
Don't we wish?
Right? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah, and so two things about that story that I think are real. I want to add to what you said, which was great and accurate, but that make it really interesting to me too. And one is that, my client he's not like an egotist. He's a good person. He wants to collaborate, but again, he was unaware of how his marketing and his personal communication and the way he was spending his day, what he was thinking about, was ultimately about how to set himself apart, how to be better than the rest, how to shine more, how to get more of the market, right? That's just the way we're trained. And I mean, there's nothing he'd rather do than collaborate, but that's not what he was trained to do. He was trained to distinguish himself. And so when the competition pointed out, you don't seem very collaborative, at first he was hurt, like, what, me? I'd love to collaborate. What makes you say that? And they had to point out the behaviors that were giving them to know that he didn't want to collaborate. So that we have to get over this training, like it's historically ingrained that we are about individuals, and rethink. And the other thing is that I wanted to say about this story is that, I mean, the whole blockchain industry, the value that it is premised on is decentralization, collaboration, not hierarchies, not monopolies, but democracy. And so as soon as the competition pointed it out to my client, he was all over it, like, because that's a shared value. Yes, I do want to collaborate. I do want, to do what I do best and have you do what you do best, and it all come together and create a synergy. So he was immediately taken by it because that's the shared value.
I've always found that, I found that very interesting in academia. And I think as not so much undergraduate, but I think, when we got into the kind of PhD program end of it, was that you're trained in that way to be extraordinarily separate. And it becomes about you and your performance and your papers and your, and you being alone in the room to do your prelim exams and all that shit, right?
Well, yeah,
And
the more unique what you're putting out, the more likely you are to get tenure.
Exactly. So you have to so you end up sort of pulling back and in this like little, cocoon that you've built. So, and not sharing really as much of what you're doing, even though probably if you did share it, you would get more ideas and more, things to enrich everything.
That's right.
But then the fascinating thing always to me was that then you get done and then you're expected to go into a weird world where you're supposed to collaborate, be part of a department, help steward new students.
Exactly.
And yet you still have to hold everything close to your chest because you're worried that your colleagues are going to steal your shit. Exactly.
Right. And that's kind of what this Gallagher guy seems to be doing in the Pilates world. And it's, I want you to know that I feel you. It's sad. It's hugely disruptive. It goes against the values of health and flexibility and everything that you stand for. Right. But yeah, I think so. There's in a way, I think, you were talking about, we kind of have to go through these rifts. And there's a lot to learn from them. And one of the things to learn is where we haven't been fostering community, where we've, not been tending our garden our mutual garden, such that we've fallen apart there. I mean, I think this might be a gross simplification, but like those people who marched in Charleston, South Carolina. I mean, they were they're afraid that they're going to be replaced. They're afraid that they're going to be replaced. Okay, well, we're not being community with them if they think that. Like, we're not sharing, we're not connecting with them if that's what they think. Like, and so they're scared. We need to speak to that fear.
Right. I mean, most of that comes from fear.
Yeah.
I think most of that comes from that, just so fearful that if everybody else is also doing something, that it's going to somehow diminish us.
Right.
And that's one thing that we're actually not taught well at all. I think especially in Western culture, and that is developing our own selves, developing our own light, developing our own awareness, inside.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So that we're then comfortable going out into the shared space and sharing that. And we're not taught that really at all, or we're just taught that in a context of a certain religion or a certain orientation. And I feel like that's a really deep issue.
I do too. I mean, for myself in my spiritual growth, I found that the more I go inside, the more I recognize, oh, I already am connected. Like, I don't even have to make connections. I'm every way that you could say that I be, from the cellular to the psychological, the spiritual, the machine, the animal, it's all already connected, right? So when you go inside, you recognize that. Like, the simplest one is just when you go inside and you're just following the breath to keep the mind off of thoughts, you recognize, like, well, I don't even have to put any effort into breathing. Like, the universe is basically taking care of that for me. So I'm already connected. The breath that keeps me alive, it's being supplied, and I don't even, right? There's a connection there already. So I think, if we were taught that, to go inside and connect with self, we recognize that self is actually connected to this big self already.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fear goes away. It's like, I don't have to fear, that somebody's going to steal my intellectual property, because it's already, I got it from other sources too. We're here to share this stuff anyway. And the more I do, the more I learn, the more people I benefit. And that's all I want anyway. So yeah, eat it up, put out a free newsletter every month. I do.
Right. Share it. Let people have it. I mean, it's just so funny that it's now like revolving around these photos, right? Literally historical photos.
Yeah.
And the guy who took most of the photos, the public photos, of Joe, that were not just done by him or his family or his clients, or that were there, was Chuck Rappaport, who, was a Time Life photographer. And he actually allows the community to use all of his photos with attribution.
See? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if what you value is people doing Pilates and being inspired to do, motivated to do it and to sustain the practice, then you would want to share those photos, right?
Sure. And then, you're working with a system created by a man whose one of his credos was, it's the mind that builds the body. He came from that kind of old school, really old school, like German gymnastics, which is, you need to focus inside, you need to connect the two. And then if your mind is in the right place and your body's in the right place, you're going to just be working well and functioning well.
That's so
period.
funny. My mind just did this thing. There's an old German gym in the town where my dad grew up, and where we would always go back to visit grandma every
Uh-huh.
Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter. And there's an old German gym there, and it still says it in, because this was founded by Germans who came across down the St. Lawrence Seaway back in the 1800s, and my family was among them. And so it still says in German, Sportverein, and
Yes.
which is so interesting. Verein means to make one,
Yes.
to make one. That's right. And that's what we're talking about here today. Community.
Right. And look, that's what, if Plato's Socrates doesn't talk all the time about the importance of keeping the body going, partly so that the mind can do its thing.
Yeah.
Because he was like, look, man, if your body starts to go, you're in pain all the time, your joints aren't working, you can't walk around, you're going to have a really hard time thinking.
Exactly right. Yes. Or like I was reading an article, not to get too philosophical, but I think that this will still land in the general public. I was reading about, like, why is it that Plato never commented on Democritus? Democritus is famous for having said that the universe is just a bunch of atoms in a void.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's that individualism, right, in its origin, probably, in our Western society. And the article pointed out very adroitly, I think, like, well, Plato was all about the politics and ethics and community, and he saw nothing he could do with Democritus's statement. If it's all atoms in the void, then we got nothing to talk about in Plato's world. So it's no wonder you didn't comment on that.
No. And frankly, he was too busy building friggin' communities. Like, that's what he did.
That's what
you want to talk about connection, collaboration, and community.
That's right. Right.
Plato had that down. Like, he was like, I'm going to bring in the discordant voices. I'm going to bring in.
Well, he traveled to other islands where they were having trouble getting their governments going, and served as sort of a consultant to help them form their governments. I mean, he was all about, the political, the ethical, the community, the family too.
Right. And he saw what he saw very directly with Socrates, what it looks like when the state comes down on what they feel is discordant or abhorrent thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, this is not new. This has been going on for a very, very, very long time.
And there's both an sort of a depressing side to that, and an uplifting side.
Right.
Because on the one hand, oh boy, here we go again. We thought we were America the Beautiful, way beyond any other government that had ever been established before, and turns out we're back to dealing with fascism and right here on American soils. But on the other hand, we know that these things do come and go. And so, we have to, I think, for the Pilates community, like, stay in your Pilates values. Keep doing what is eternally true and good about Pilates, and let this incident, have its day. Don't give it any more energy than it ought to have. And just know, in your heart of hearts, that the truth will win out. Community will win out.
Yeah. I was thinking about this morning, because I was sort of, I've been tracking a lot of the Kanye West news, and mostly because, as you know, my mother was bipolar. And so whenever I kind of see him very publicly start to go into what's obviously like a kind of manic spiral, at least with my mom, like, hers were pretty private. Mm-hmm. They were horrible, but they were private. Mm-hmm. And I was reading, this morning that after, Adidas dropped him and he lost, 75% of his net worth, like, overnight, that yesterday he walked into Skechers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Skechers is, first of all, is owned by a Jewish family, founded by a Jewish family. Mm-hmm. And he was, of course, filming because everything's got to be, filmed now or it didn't happen. And they were like, why are you even here? Because you don't have an appointment and you're filming. So they got security and they escorted them all out. And that was the end of that one.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, this is also part of what happens when you start to feel like you can just be by yourself. Right. And go alone, and that the power is yours and not in the community that's following you, the community that's building you, the community that's, paying $500 for your sneakers, the community that's, valuing that from you. And right. You kind of get that feeling immediately of that, no, it's all about me. I am going to be fine. I will always be here. It doesn't matter how much money I have, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then you kind of see where then the community is like, we don't know if we can deal with you anymore. Yeah. Yeah. If you need to be that separate from us. Right. And you kind of see the same thing happening with Trump.
Oh, absolutely. It also reminds me, and these are there's an episode, it's one of David Attenborough's Planet Earth episode. Mm-hmm. It's about the community of elephants. And just to make the long story as short as possible, a mother has a child and the child is sickly and they can't find water. And so she separates from the community to be with the child. But then when she's lost, then she's on her own and she mm-hmm. will die. She will die out there in the desert because it doesn't work on your own. It never has, and it never will.
Right. Right. Well, that's always like the, every year people get gored by bison, right? Yellowstone. And it's mostly because if there's a bison standing there that you're going to go near, it's usually a bison by itself. And they're herd animals. Yeah. So the ones that are by themselves are already either sick or old or pissy or whatever. They're in some state that the herd is like, no. Mm-hmm. You can be here by yourself. We'll be over here doing our thing. And they're automatically going to be pissier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And just like Kanye West is, just like Trump is, they're pissier because they're on their own.
Right. Right. So community collaboration and connection, my friends.
That's right. You Pilates people, or we Pilates people, ought to just join hands and let this Gallagher thing just fall away.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I agree. It's better to come together around something, and something that's not contentious.
Something that we value, around our values as people who practice Pilates.
Yeah.
That's what will live on, not him.
Right. Right. And that's why we still have Pilates.
Exactly.
Close to a century later.
Amen. Amen.
Is because it still works. So, for anyone listening who is really in tune with what Dr. Martin Kettelhut has been saying and talking to us about, and the insights really that you've brought into this, particular time and situation within our Pilates community, if that is jiving with you and it's working for you, know that Marty is offering a 1-hour gift, no cost coaching session where you just bring a topic and he will go deep around that particular topic with you for an hour. I can't recommend this enough. I just can't. If you are struggling with something and you're struggling with something deep and you're really not sure where to go with it and you are not finding those answers in Facebook groups, where I pretty much promise you're not going to find the answers.
or if you've got a project, if maybe it's not a struggle, but it's a project that needs to get off the ground that your values are imbued with, then I would be great support for getting that off the ground, organizing it, planning it, having it be a success.
So where can people best get in touch with you?
The best place to go is to my website, which is listening is the key, as if we're one word, listeningisthekey.com. And
the link will be in the show notes.
Right. And immediately once you're there for a couple of seconds, a little note will come up as, hey, do you want to schedule a gift session? And just click on that.
Perfect. That makes it easy.
There you go.
Here's where we like automation.
Right, exactly.
Here's where those little moments of not having to do it all ourselves.
Amen. Yeah.
Comes in handy. And the fact is we can use technology to separate us, and we can use technology to bring us together. And I personally am a huge fan of using technology to bring us all together, because otherwise, what's the point? So we could just sit there and scroll mindlessly for no apparent reason.
Right. And we have those moments. I know we do. We all, we retreat. We need to retreat at times and just sort of like be consumed in our telephones and all of the things that it offers. But we don't fulfill our humanity that way. It's just a diversion for a while, but then we go back to being connected human beings.
Yes. Yes. And that is what's most important.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks, Marty. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it was delightful.
So thrilled that you were here. And
me too.
So everyone who's listening, thank you once again so much for listening. I encourage you, as I always do, to go over to Spotify or to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review of the Pilates Goddess podcast. Even if you don't listen to it primarily on Apple Podcasts, the Apple Podcast reviews are really important because it's one of the only places where you can leave a written review and not just a star rating. So I would really appreciate that. And I think as I start getting more and more written reviews, I'm going to start reading them out and shouting them out in the podcast and giving you all some love back for the love that you give me. And thanks again for joining. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.